Marcus Webb was running conduit through a government facility on the Velrani homeworld when he took a wrong turn and found the detention area. He was a civilian infrastructure contractor, helping integrate human and Velrani computer systems across various government buildings. The work was technical and usually boring, running cables, installing interfaces, testing connections. The detention area wasn't on his work map. He'd gotten turned around in the facility's complex layout and ended up in a corridor he wasn't supposed to be in. Two guards stood outside a reinforced door, but they were casual, talking, not particularly alert. The prisoner inside clearly wasn't considered dangerous. Marcus should have turned around and left. But he'd heard them talking as he approached, and something caught his attention. Political prisoner, yeah, spoke against the council, spread seditious claims. She'll be here until they arrange the trial. Seems like a waste. She doesn't look dangerous. Dangerous to the wrong people, maybe. That's why she's here. Marcus felt cold realization. Political prisoner, held for speaking against the council. That sounded like someone imprisoned for their views, not for actual crimes. He shouldn't get involved. This wasn't his business. He was here to install computer systems, not to investigate Velrani political disputes. But over the next day, as he continued working in the facility, he kept thinking about it. He managed to access records that showed the prisoner was named Sira, charged with undermining council authority and spreading seditious claims against legitimate officials. The charges were vague, political. Marcus made inquiries carefully, talking to Velrani staff in the facility without revealing why he was asking. The picture that emerged was troubling. Sira had been investigating something, had made accusations against senior council members, and had been arrested shortly after. It looked like someone being silenced for threatening powerful people. Marcus knew he should stay out of it. But he couldn't stop thinking about someone imprisoned not for actual crimes but for political inconvenience. After 3 days of internal debate, he made a decision. He was going to help her escape. It was dangerous and probably illegal, but leaving someone unjustly imprisoned felt worse than the risks of helping. Using his access to facility systems, he was installing the infrastructure after all, which gave him extensive system access. Marcus identified security gaps and created a plan. Late one night, when guard shifts changed and surveillance had brief gaps, Marcus disabled security in the detention area long enough to open Sira's cell and lead her through maintenance corridors to an exit. Sira was suspicious at first. "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." "Because you're imprisoned for political reasons, not for actual crimes. That's unjust. I can't fix all injustice, but I can help you. You're risking significant legal consequences to help a stranger." "Yeah, but leaving you imprisoned for threatening corrupt officials seems worse than the risks of helping." He got her out of the facility, provided basic supplies and credits, helped her reach a safe location outside the city where she could disappear if needed. "What will you do now?" Marcus asked. "Continue what I started before they silenced me. You've given me a chance to fight back. I won't waste it." "Be careful. Whatever you were investigating, they tried to stop you once. They'll try again." "I know, but now they've shown their hand. They've proven they're willing to imprison people who threaten them. That's valuable information." She looked at him seriously. "Thank you. You've helped me when you had no obligation and no reason to trust my word over the council's charges." "That's rare, that matters." Marcus returned to his quarters, nervous about what he'd done but unable to regret it. He'd helped someone who was unjustly imprisoned. Whatever happened next, that had been the right thing to do. The next day, Marcus was required to attend a major council session. His infrastructure contract included provisions that he witness certain governmental proceedings for proper documentation of system security during sensitive meetings. He'd attended several of these sessions before. They were usually boring: administrative matters, budget discussions, procedural confirmations. Today's session was supposed to address administrative matters and confirmation of recent security decisions. Marcus expected another few hours of tedious bureaucratic discussion. The council chamber was packed. All the senior council members were present, including First Counselor Torak, who led the proceedings. Guards lined the walls. Observers and government officials filled the gallery. The session began with routine matters, approval of various administrative decisions, confirmation of appointments. Marcus half listened, taking notes for his documentation requirements. Then the main chamber doors opened. Sira walked in, not sneaking, not hiding, but striding forward with absolute authority. She was flanked by Velrani guards wearing different insignia than the usual city security forces, military guard uniforms, Marcus realized, not city police. The entire chamber erupted in shock. Multiple council members stood, voices raised in confusion and alarm. First Counselor Torak's voice cut through the chaos. "Guards, arrest that woman immediately. She's an escaped prisoner, a convicted traitor." "Silence!" Sira's voice carried across the chamber with command that froze everyone mid-motion. "I am Counselor Sira, legitimate member of this council, illegally imprisoned on fabricated charges by corrupt officials who feared exposure of their crimes. I have returned to claim my rightful seat and present evidence of the conspiracy that sought to silence me." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "Counselor," she was a council member. The chamber descended into controlled chaos. Some council members looked shocked but not disbelieving. They'd clearly suspected something was wrong with Sira's arrest. Others were panicking, their guilt obvious in their reactions. First Counselor Torak tried to regain control. "This is absurd. She was convicted of sedition and treason." "I was never convicted," Sira interrupted coldly. "I was arrested on false charges and held without trial while you worked to fabricate evidence that would make my imprisonment appear legitimate. But someone helped me escape before you could complete your conspiracy. That gave me time to reach loyalists outside your control and gather evidence you couldn't suppress." Her gaze swept the chamber and landed on Marcus, sitting in the observer section. "A human who knew nothing about my position or the evidence I held. He helped me simply because he saw injustice and chose to act against it. That simple act of principle gave me the time I needed to gather proof of your crimes." Marcus felt every eye in the chamber turn toward him. He wanted to disappear. Sira began presenting her evidence systematically. The military guards she'd brought with her distributed data tablets to the legitimate council members, those not implicated in the corruption. "For 6 months, I investigated financial irregularities within council operations. What I discovered was systematic corruption, embezzlement of funds meant for infrastructure and social programs, acceptance of bribes from contractors, manipulation of contracts for personal gain." She presented financial records showing credits diverted from public projects into private accounts, communications between council members discussing how to hide their activities, testimony from witnesses who'd been too frightened to speak while the corrupt faction held power. "When I gathered sufficient evidence to expose this conspiracy, the corrupt faction moved against me. I was arrested on fabricated charges of sedition, held without trial, isolated while they worked to arrange proceedings that would permanently silence me through exile or execution." First Counselor Torak tried to interrupt. "This is all lies fabricated by a traitor. The evidence is verified by independent auditors from the Military Oversight Division," one of the military officers announced. "The financial records are authentic. The communications are confirmed through secured military servers that the corrupt faction couldn't access to delete. Counselor Sira's investigations were thorough, and her conclusions are supported by documentation." Multiple council members were implicated, not just Torak but 5 others, all senior officials with significant authority. They'd been systematically stealing from government funds while using their positions to cover their tracks. The legitimate council members, Those not involved in the corruption moved decisively. Orders were given for arrest of the implicated officials. Guards moved to detain them. Torak tried one final protest. "You can't do this." "I'm first counselor." "You're a criminal who abused your authority," Sira said flatly. "Your title means nothing when you violated every principle it's supposed to represent." Within an hour, the corrupt council members were in custody. Emergency protocols were activated to ensure continuity of government, while the full extent of the corruption was investigated. Marcus sat in stunned silence, watching the woman he'd helped escape the previous night systematically dismantle a corrupt faction that had controlled the council. After the chamber mostly cleared and the immediate crisis was managed, Sira found him. "We need to talk." She led him to a private chamber, away from the chaos. Once the door closed, her formal authority softened slightly. "I owe you an explanation and an enormous debt." "I'm sorry I didn't tell you who I was," Sira said. "When you found me imprisoned, I couldn't be sure of your motives. If you'd known I was a council member, you might have been working with the corrupt faction to determine what evidence I'd gathered or who my allies were." Marcus was still processing. "You're actually a council member, a legitimate government official." "Yes, I've served for 8 years. When I discovered the financial corruption, I investigated carefully, gathering evidence that couldn't be disputed. But I moved too slowly. The corrupt faction learned what I was doing and moved against me before I could present my findings to the full council." "They had you arrested on fake charges." "Yes, they couldn't kill me outright. That would draw too much attention and investigation. But they could imprison me on sedition charges that seemed plausible enough, hold me while they fabricated more evidence, then arrange a trial that would look legitimate while ensuring I was permanently silenced through exile or execution. But I helped you escape before they could do that. You gave me time. Time to reach military loyalists who weren't compromised by the corrupt faction. Time to access independent servers where I'd backed up evidence they couldn't delete. Time to gather allies who could protect me while I presented my case." Sira looked at Marcus seriously. "You saved more than my life. You saved our government from corruption that would have destroyed it from within. Those officials were stealing resources meant for essential services. They were undermining trust in government through their greed. By helping me escape, you gave me the chance to expose them and restore legitimate authority." Marcus tried to articulate his confusion. "I just thought you were someone unjustly imprisoned for political reasons. I didn't know you were investigating major corruption or that you were a council member. I couldn't stand by while someone was imprisoned for threatening powerful people." "That's exactly why your help mattered so profoundly," Sira said quietly. "You acted from principle, not from calculation about who I was or what helping me might gain you. You saw injustice and chose to act against it, even at significant personal risk. That kind of integrity, that willingness to do what's right regardless of personal benefit, that's what we desperately need." "What happens now?" "Now we rebuild proper governance. The corrupt faction is being prosecuted. I'm being confirmed as legitimate council member with my imprisonment ruled illegal. And we're investigating the full extent of their crimes to ensure we've identified everyone involved." "And me. I'm probably in legal trouble for helping a prisoner escape. You're being granted full immunity and formal recognition for your role in exposing government corruption. Without you, I'd still be imprisoned, and the corrupt faction would have continued stealing from our people indefinitely." Marcus was uncomfortable. "I don't need recognition for helping someone who was unjustly imprisoned." "Then accept recognition for the thousands of people who would have continued suffering under corrupt government if you hadn't acted. Your simple act of compassion has changed the fate of our entire world's governance. That deserves acknowledgement." Over the following months, as the full extent of the corruption was investigated and prosecuted, Marcus and Sira developed genuine partnership. She valued his integrity and willingness to act on principle despite personal risk. He respected her courage in investigating corruption, even knowing it would make her powerful enemies. Marcus continued his infrastructure work, but also served as informal advisor, his outsider perspective valuable precisely because he approached problems from principle rather than political calculation. 6 months after helping Sira escape, Marcus attended another council session. This time, Sira was formally presiding as one of the senior council members, the corrupt faction having been replaced by officials chosen for integrity rather than connections. After the session, she spoke with him privately. "I've been thinking about that night when you helped me escape. You asked what I'd do, and I said I'd continue what I started. You told me to be careful, that they'd try to stop me again. But I remember. You were right to be concerned, but you were also right that helping me was worth the risk. Because of you, we've removed corruption that was poisoning our government. Because of you, resources are now going where they're supposed to instead of into private accounts. Because of you, people can trust that their government serves them rather than enriching officials. But I just helped one person who was unjustly imprisoned. You helped the right person at the right time. That's what matters. One act of principle changed everything." The human who'd helped a prisoner escape had unknowingly restored legitimate authority to someone who could fix a corrupt system. His simple act of justice, performed without knowing its full significance, had become the spark that overturned a conspiracy and restored proper governance. Sira had been right. Sometimes the most important things we do are simple acts of compassion performed from principle rather than calculation. Marcus had helped because it was right, not because he knew who she was or what his help would accomplish. And that integrity, that willingness to act justly regardless of personal benefit, had changed the fate of an entire world's government.